You're not imagining it. Grocery prices are still going up. In fact, new data shows that you're paying 50% more on basic food staples this year than you were 4 years ago. This winter, you'll be forced to spend even more, according to experts' forecasts. Farmers and ranchers are saying that extreme weather events have caused cattle and crop production to decline throughout 2024, and we will see the impact of that in the next few months as food becomes more scarce and more expensive. But there's something much more sinister fueling these abusive price hikes. A new report revealed that food manufacturers and retailers are shamelessly using inflation as an excuse to keep on passing higher costs to consumers. With the overwhelming majority of Americans worried about affording groceries, this situation is reaching critical proportions. Millions of U.S. households are being wiped out and going into debt just to buy everyday essentials. What is truly behind this distressing trend? What can we do about it? In this video, we're breaking down the grocery crisis that's unfolding right now across America, and we have to admit, it's far worse than you think. Let's start with the facts. Americans are increasingly worried about the cost of groceries. A fresh survey found that a whopping 90% of adults expressed concern about that, and food costs topped consumers' lists of economic worries in 2024. There is good reason for this. So far this year, consumers spent 95% more for a carton of eggs, 33% more for a pound of ground beef, and 22% more for a gallon of milk than they did before the pandemic. According to an analysis by Food and Water Watch, a corporate watchdog group, food costs for an average family of 4 living on a thrifty budget increased 50% from January 2020 to January 2024, from $654 to $976 a month. In some markets, the price distortions are even greater. Angry customers have been taking their complaints to social media platforms where they can share what they're seeing at their local stores on a daily basis. Now, in a recent image thread, one user posted an image showing a price comparison of some basic grocery items such as yellow mango, chicken thighs, salad dressing, and orange juice that were bought at Walmart in 2022 and in 2024. The person noted that the price of the very same products soared by 75% in a 2-year span. The second user commented, "It's week to week now. I have Walmart Plus and reordered the exact same groceries as last week. It was 22% higher this week with the same items." And a third shared, "Kroger's is the worst. Hamburger meat, $7 a pound at the one in my area. That's almost double from 2022. Well, many of us can certainly understand their frustration, whether you're shopping for your family of 4 or just trying to keep your fridge stocked for yourself. Every trip to the store is a reminder that things are changing and not for the better. The reasons behind these skyrocketing prices are complex, but they affect all of us in ways that we might not fully realize yet. 1. The inflation factor. Now, inflation is a term we've heard a lot over the past few years, but what does it really mean when it comes to the groceries we buy every week? Well, inflation is essentially the decline in the purchasing power of your dollar. It means you're paying more for the same amount of goods. But the biggest problem now is that inflation in the grocery sector is significantly outpacing wages. That's why you're noticing that your paycheck isn't stretching nearly as far as it did just a year ago. 2. The role of supply chain disruptions. Of course, inflation alone isn't to blame for the devastating surge in the cost of basic food items since 2020. The pandemic set off a chain reaction of supply chain disruptions that we're still feeling today. From labor shortages to congested ports, the logistical nightmare has made it harder and more expensive to get food from farms to grocery store shelves. 3. The impact of the climate crisis. Extreme weather events have also contributed to heftier price tags and emptier shelves at U.S. supermarkets. Droughts, floods, abnormal weather patterns have hurt crops and livestock production. And if you think conditions are bad now, brace yourself, because many experts are predicting that the worst is yet to come. Now, 3. Food industry consolidation. There's another piece of this puzzle that deserves our close attention. A handful of mega corporations dominate the food industry, controlling everything from farming to packaging to distribution. Now, when these giants decide to raise prices, the entire market follows suit, and consumers are left with no choice but to pay up. While families are struggling to make ends meet, these big corporations are hiding behind difficult times, but enjoying record profits. When pressed, big food companies claim they're doing everything they can to keep prices down, blaming inflation for the inevitable rise in costs. But the real numbers tell a darker story. Consumers are being wiped out while these companies are raking in billions, handing out hefty dividends to their shareholders, and spending staggering amounts of money to buy back their own stocks to inflate the value of their shares, making sure executives and investors get richer at the expense of ordinary people. Take PepsiCo, for example. Their chief financial officer, Hugh Johnston, told Bloomberg that the steep price hikes on their products were simply to cover inflation. He even claimed that people still see PepsiCo items as worth paying for, even if they can't afford life's bigger luxuries. But those luxuries seem reserved for top investors like Johnston himself, who pocketed $4.6 million in shares in 2021 as part of his bloated compensation. In 2023, PepsiCo pulled in $91 billion in net revenue, and that is a whopping 35% increase from pre-pandemic days. Instead of helping consumers, they pumped $7.7 billion into stock buybacks and dividends, with stock buybacks skyrocketing by 843% since 2021. This year, they're on track to give even more, $8.2 billion back to their shareholders. Tyson Foods followed a similar pattern. Between 2021 and 2022, they more than doubled their profit margins after jacking up prices on beef, on pork, and chicken by over 30%. They claim rising labor, transportation, and feed costs forced the price hikes. But here's the truth. While their costs did go up by $1.5 billion in 2022, the price increases brought in an extra $2 billion, leaving them with $500 million in pure profit after covering inflation. Just like PepsiCo, Tyson spent $702 million buying back their own stock and even raised dividends by 4%. Oh, the manipulation is up and down the supply chain. Everyone's taking a little bit of margin here, said Lindsay Owens, executive director of the Groundwork Collaborative. That's a progressive think tank and advocacy group. Now, the Federal Trade Commission found back in March that big box retailers used rising costs as an opportunity to further hike prices to increase their profits. Last year, Walmart's price hikes went viral. A simple comparison of receipts from 2020 to 2023 showed that the cost of Walmart's great value brand had tripled on some items.
I feel like I'm going to be sick. I just looked through my Walmart history, and I found this Walmart order from 2 years ago for the whole month worth of groceries. 45 items cost $126. A whole month of groceries just for me, basically. But I did notice this reorder all button, and I wanted to see how much it would cost now. Now, this order of 45 items for 1 month would have cost $414. That is 4 times more.
Meanwhile, Walmart's revenue hit $611 million in 2023, and executives authorized a jaw-dropping $9.9 billion in stock buybacks. That's a 277% surge from 2021. And it's not just about price hikes. Food products are shrinking too. This sneaky tactic, dubbed shrinkflation, is another way companies squeeze more money out of us customers. According to a report from the Groundwork Collaborative, changes in packaging size are responsible for 10% of all price increases on essentials like snack foods. 4. The impact on families. Meanwhile, millions of Americans are being pushed to the brink, forced to make impossible choices. For countless families, the rising cost of living is devastating. At the moment, many hard-working parents are scared for the future as they struggle to feed their families. You used to be able to get 5 bags of groceries for $50. Now you only get 1 bag for $50, said Janet Ortigoza, a mother from Fresno, California, in an interview with NBC News. She said, "I'm honestly scared to have another baby because I don't think we can afford it. Now that she's growing, she's going to need to eat 3 times a day. It's so hard to give her the right nutrition." Ortigoza's story is painfully common. Stacey Ellis, a full-time nurse from Pennsylvania, took on a second part-time job just to make ends meet. Even then, she had to rely on risky payday loans just to survive through the worst grocery inflation in over 40 years. She said, "Before inflation, I didn't have any debt, no credit cards, never applied for payday loans, but now I've had to do all those things. I've completely downgraded my life." Dylan Garthia, a 26-year-old security guard from Brooklyn, says buying groceries has never been harder. He used to enjoy fresh food and brand-name items, but now he's surviving on ramen noodles and frozen vegetables, eating just twice a day because he simply can't afford more. At checkout, he uses buy now, pay later schemes to cover the costs, paying in installments, but the debt keeps piling up. "I'm stuck in a loop," he admits. "It's become an insecurity to pull up my phone at the register and have to use these programs. When they see me, it's embarrassing." 5. The ripple effect. Forced to cope with the soaring cost of living and rising personal debt, more and more Americans are turning to food banks, and many are having to make painful choices between buying groceries or paying for essentials like rent, utilities, or even medication. Since the end of pandemic-era social safety programs in 2021, hunger has surged across the country. Between 2020 and 2022, an additional 3.5 million households have faced food insecurity. Families with children have been hit especially hard, with food insecurity in these homes jumping up by 24% in just 1 year. The Department of Agriculture reports that around 28 million adults in the U.S. don't have reliable access to enough food to live an active and healthy life, leading many to eat unbalanced diets, cutting meal sizes, or skipping meals altogether. 6. Why is it gonna get worse? Well, farmers and ranchers are sounding the alarm. The grocery crisis is set to get even worse this winter. Dry weather in the summers of 2023 and 2024 caused U.S. cattle production to plunge to its lowest level in decades, which will lead to even more price hikes in the coming weeks. John Boyd Jr., president of the National Black Farmers Association, in an interview with Fox News, said this is a bad situation for both cattle farmers and the country. We're producing 1 billion pounds less beef than we were just a year ago. Last year, beef sold for an average of $5 per pound, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Experts are now predicting that prices could double by the end of the year. Americans are going to pay the price at their local grocery stores, Boyd emphasized. In the spring, California farmers faced a different problem: extreme wet, cold weather delayed planting. Berries, tomatoes, leafy greens were hit by the floodings. Now, California grows nearly half of the nation's fruits, nuts, and leafy greens like lettuce, spinach, kale, so this disruption will have a national impact. Monterey County alone reported over $336 million in agricultural damage, with over 15,000 acres of crops like romaine lettuce, strawberries, wine grapes, and broccoli completely gone, destroyed. With consumer demand typically peaking around the holidays, expect to pay even more as supplies dwindle this season. 7. The bigger picture. So, what can we do to fight grocery inflation? It's easy to feel powerless as prices continue to rise, but there are some steps you can take to protect your family from the worst of the crisis. Now, let me give you some practical tips. First, try meal planning. Stick to a grocery list. This helps avoid impulse buys, keeps your budget under control. Look for deals, use coupons, buy in bulk when possible to stretch your dollars further. You could also start a small home garden to grow your own fruits and vegetables. It's more affordable than you might think. Another helpful step is getting involved in your local community. Many neighborhoods are setting up co-ops and community gardens to share the burden of rising food costs. It's a great way to connect with others and ensure access to fresh, healthy food for everyone. However, the reality is that no amount of meal planning or coupon clipping will solve the bigger systemic issues at hand. Our leaders need to take action, investing in our supply chains, regulating monopolistic practices in the food industry, and ensuring that no one goes hungry in the world's wealthiest country. The grocery crisis we're facing in 2024 isn't just about higher prices. It's about the survival of the American people. That's why we can't afford to ignore it. Look, if you found this video helpful, please share it with others who might also need to hear this message. Don't forget to hit subscribe, share your thoughts in the comments. We do read them so we can keep this conversation going. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you in the next video.